The stars looked beautiful through the observation deck windows. Captain Jiwon Park stood there watching them twinkle in the endless darkness of space. She had been doing this job for 10 years now, and the view still took her breath away. Behind her, the research station hummed with activity. Scientists from Earth and Valora worked side by side, sharing knowledge and building something amazing together. "Captain, you should come see this," called out Dr. Hyeji Lee from across the room. The young scientist was smiling, her eyes bright with excitement. Next to her stood Velmara, a Velaran with smooth blue skin and large, gentle eyes. The Velaran looked like dolphins that learned to walk on land with sleek bodies and kind faces. Jiwon walked over to the workstation. On the screen, complex patterns moved and shifted. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "We just finished mapping the mineral deposits on Talos Prime's third moon," Hyeji explained. "There's enough rare Earth elements there to power both our civilizations for a century." She looked at Velmara with pride. "We couldn't have done it without Velaran scanning technology." Velmara made a sound like water flowing over rocks, which the translator rendered as soft laughter. "And we could not have reached this moon without human courage. Your ships go where ours fear to travel." This was how it had been for 30 years. Humans and Velaran working together, helping each other. The Velaran were peaceful, maybe the most peaceful beings in the entire galaxy. They never fought, never raised weapons, never even raised their voices in anger. When humanity first stumbled into galactic space, frightened and alone, the Velaran had welcomed them with open arms. Jiwon remembered the stories her instructors told at the academy. How the first human ships were primitive, barely able to cross their own solar system. How the Velaran found them and shared their shield technology, their medicine, their friendship. The Alliance had saved humanity from dying out in the cold void of space. "Captain Park, to the bridge!" Lieutenant Minho Kim's voice crackled over the intercom. Something in his tone made Jiwon's stomach tighten. Minho never sounded worried, but he did now. She hurried to the bridge, her boots clanging on the metal floors. The bridge was small but efficient, with screens showing every corner of space around the station. Minho stood at the tactical console, his face tight with concern. "What is it?" Jiwon asked. "Distress signal, Captain. From Surath Colony." Minho pulled up the transmission. Static filled the air, then a voice broke through, screaming in the Velaran language. The translator struggled to keep up. "Under attack. Ships everywhere. They're killing everyone. Please help." Then silence. Jiwon's blood ran cold. Surath was a Velaran colony world, home to 50,000 peaceful civilians. They had no weapons, no defenses beyond basic shields. "How far?" 6 hours at maximum speed," Minho replied. "I've already sent the alert to the Horizon's Promise. She's warming up engines now." The Horizon's Promise was Jiwon's ship, a joint human-Velaran vessel designed for exploration and protection. She was fast and strong, with the best of both civilizations built into her hull. If anyone could help Surath, it was them. "Get Ambassador Daeho Choi on the line," Jiwon ordered. "He needs to know about this." Within minutes, the ambassador's face appeared on screen. Daeho was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent decades working with the Galactic Council, trying to build peace among the stars. "Captain Park, I've heard the report." "This is troubling." "Troubling?" Jiwon couldn't hide her anger. "Ambassador, they're under attack. We need to respond immediately." "I agree," Daeho said slowly. "But we must be careful. The Kresh Empire has been expanding their territory. This might be their doing. If we respond with force, it could start a war." The Kresh were reptilian beings, cold and calculating. They ruled a large empire through fear and strength. But they had treaties with the Galactic Council. Attacking a council member world would break those treaties. "I don't care who's doing it," Jiwon said. "The Velaran need help." "We're going," Daeho nodded. "I understand. I'll contact the council and demand an emergency session." "Go, Captain." "Save who you can," the connection cut off. Jiwon turned to Minho. "Prepare the ship. Full combat load. Get everyone on board in 30 minutes. The next half hour passed in a blur. Crew members rushed through corridors. Weapons were loaded, shields powered up. Hyeji insisted on coming, along with Velmara and several other Valoran scientists. "If our people are hurt, they'll need medical care," Hyeji argued. Jiwon couldn't say no. The Horizon's Promise broke away from the station, her engines burning bright blue as they pushed toward maximum speed. In the ship's ready room, Jiwon gathered her senior officers. Minho stood next to her, along with Commander Boram Han, who led the Marine detachment. "We don't know what we're flying into," Jiwan said. "Could be raiders, could be the Kresh, could be something else entirely. Stay sharp, stay ready. Our mission is to save Valoran lives." Boram checked her weapon, a human plasma rifle. "And if whoever did this is still there?" Jiwan's jaw tightened. "Then we show them why you don't attack our friends." The hours crawled by. Jiwan couldn't sit still, couldn't rest. She paced the bridge, watching the stars streak past. The Valoran had saved humanity once. 5 years ago, her ship had been caught in a spatial anomaly, a tear in space that pulled them toward death. The Valoran had risked everything to save them, flying their ships into danger to pull the humans free. Jiwan had held Velmara's hand that day, both of them terrified, both of them trusting each other completely. Now it was humanity's turn to save the Valoran. "Coming up on Sarath," Minho announced. Dropping out of faster than light in 3, 2, 1. The ship shuddered as it returned to normal space. Jiwan looked at the main screen and felt her heart break. Sarath burned. The planet's surface was scarred with fire and destruction. Orbital platforms floated in pieces, broken and dead. Ships drifted in the debris field, Valoran vessels torn apart by weapons fire. There was no movement, no life signs on the scanners. "Oh no," Hyeji whispered. She had come to the bridge, and now she stood frozen, staring at the devastation. "No, no, no! Scan for survivors," Jiwan ordered, her voice mechanical. "Any life signs at all?" Minho worked the controls, his hands shaking slightly. "I'm getting something. On the surface in the northern colony. Faint biosigns. Maybe a few hundred people. Take us down," Jiwan said. "Boram, get your Marines ready. Hyeji, prepare medical." The horizon's promise descended through the smoke and ash. The colony had been beautiful once, with crystal buildings and flowing water gardens. Now it was ruins. Bodies lay in the streets, Valoran civilians who had tried to run and failed. The ship landed in what used to be a central plaza. The Marines deployed first, securing the area. Then Jiwan led a team into the largest surviving building. Inside they found them. Valoran survivors, maybe 300, huddled in a basement shelter. Among them was a young Valoran named Kyung, barely more than a child. Kyung looked up at Jiwan with eyes full of tears. "They came from the sky," the young one said. "Big ships with guns. They didn't ask questions. They just started shooting. We couldn't fight back. We never learned how." Jiwan knelt down, putting a gentle hand on Kyung's shoulder. "You're safe now. We're taking you home." But as the survivors were loaded onto the ship, Minho discovered something that changed everything. He pulled Jiwan aside, showing her his scanner readings. "Captain, look at this. I pulled the data from the colony's defense satellites before they were destroyed." Jiwan looked at the data and felt ice fill her veins. "These ship signatures. These are Kresh vessels." "Yes," Minho said quietly. "But look at these others. Those transponder codes. They're Galactic Council members. The Threx, the Luminar, the Ondari. They were here too. They helped do this." Jiwan stared at the evidence, unable to believe it. The Galactic Council had attacked a peaceful Valoran colony. They had murdered civilians. They had betrayed everything they claimed to stand for, and somewhere out there they were still hunting. "Get us out of here," Jiwan ordered. "We need to get these survivors to safety and report this to Earth." Everything just changed. The horizon's promise lifted off, carrying the survivors away from their dead world. Jiwan stood on the bridge, watching Sarath shrink behind them. The Valoran had saved humanity when they needed it most. Now someone had attacked them, had killed them, had shown the galaxy that peace and kindness meant nothing. But humanity remembered its debts. Humanity protected its friends, and someone was going to pay for this. The horizon's promise rushed through space, carrying the survivors from Sarath. In the medical bay, Hyeji worked alongside Velmara, treating wounded Valoran. Burns, broken bones, trauma that went deeper than any physical injury. The Valoran were a peaceful people, and they had never experienced violence like this before. Young Kyung sat on a medical bed, staring at nothing. Hyeji approached slowly, carefully. "Can you tell me what happened?" "Take your time." Kyung's voice was barely a whisper. "I was in school, learning about the stars, about other worlds. Then the alarms went off. Teacher told us to run to the shelters, but I looked up and saw them. The ships. They were huge and dark. They started firing at the buildings, at the gardens, at everything. Did you see what the ships looked like?" Hyeji asked gently. "Big ones with scales painted on them. like giant reptiles. But there were others too, shiny ones that looked like crystals, and some that were round and blue. Kyung started crying. Why did they hate us? We never hurt anyone, Hiji had no answer. She just held the young Velarin close, feeling her own tears fall. On the bridge, Jiwon and Minho were studying the evidence. The data was clear and damning. Kresh warships had led the attack, but they weren't alone. 3 other species from the Galactic Council had joined them. The Threx with their insect-like ships, the Luminar with their crystal vessels, and the Ondari with their sphere-shaped cruisers. This doesn't make sense, Minho said, running the data again. The Council exists to prevent this kind of thing. Why would they attack one of their own members? Before Jiwon could answer, alarm screamed across the bridge. Contact, shouted the sensor officer. Multiple ships dropping out of faster than light. Crash signatures. They're powering weapons at battle stations, Jiwon commanded. Get those survivors to the escape pods, now! The Horizon's Promise was a good ship, but she wasn't a warship. She had shields and some weapons, but she was built for exploration and research. The Kresh vessels approaching were pure military, built only to kill. They're hailing us, Minho reported. Put them on screen. A Kresh commander appeared, his reptilian face cold and emotionless. Human vessel. You are carrying stolen property. Surrender the Velarin survivors and you may leave. Jiwon felt rage boil in her chest. Stolen property? They're living beings, you monster. They're survivors of your massacre. They are loose ends, the Kresh said simply. We cannot allow witnesses. This is your only warning. The transmission cut off. Jiwon gripped her command chair. Minho, can we outrun them? Not with the damage we took landing on Serath. They'll catch us in an hour. Then we fight, target their lead ship. All weapons. The Horizon's Promise opened fire, her weapons flashing in the darkness. The shots hit the Kresh shields, barely making them flicker. Return fire slammed into the human ship, shaking her to the core. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. Shields at 60%, Minho reported. We can't take many more hits like that. In the medical bay, Velmara was helping load survivors into escape pods when the ship shook again. She stumbled, catching herself on a wall. Hiji grabbed her arm. We need to get you to a pod, too. No, Velmara said firmly. I will not abandon this ship while she fights for my people. Another explosion rocked the ship. This one was different, louder. Alarms blared. Hull breach in medical bay. Someone screamed over the intercom. Hieji looked up in horror as the wall began to crack. Everyone out, now! The Velarin survivors rushed toward the doors. Velmara pushed them forward, making sure each one got through. Hieji pulled at her arm. Come on, we have to go. Almost everyone is out, Velmara said calmly. Just a few more seconds. The wall exploded inward. The vacuum of space began pulling everything toward the breach. Emergency force fields struggled to activate. Velmara pushed Hieji toward the door with surprising strength. Go, save them. No, Hieji screamed, reaching back. Their hands touched for just a moment. Then Velmara was pulled into space, gone in an instant. Hieji screamed until someone dragged her away from the breach. The force fields finally activated, sealing the hole. But it was too late. Velmara was gone. On the bridge, Jiwon saw the casualty report flash across her screen. Her friend, the Velarin who had worked beside her crew for years, was dead. Killed trying to save others. Just like the Velarin had always been, selfless to the end. Captain, we're being hailed again, Minho said quietly. It's not the Kresh, it's a human ship. The Soul's Fury. Relief flooded through Jiwon. The Soul's Fury was a destroyer. A real warship. Put them on. Commander Boram Han appeared on screen, but not the Boram from the Horizon's Promise. This was another officer with the same name, commanding her own vessel. Captain Park, we picked up your distress signal. We're coming in hot. 30 seconds. The Soul's Fury dropped out of faster than light right into the middle of the battle. She was bigger, stronger, and angrier than any Kresh ship. Her weapons lit up the darkness as she opened fire. The Kresh ships that had been tearing apart the Horizon's Promise suddenly found themselves on the defensive. All Kresh vessels, stand down or be destroyed, Commander Han broadcast. You have 5 seconds to comply. The Kresh didn't comply. They fired on the destroyer. It was a mistake. The Soul's Fury tore through them like they were made of paper. Her railguns punched through shields. Her missiles found weak points. Her tactical systems were beyond anything the Kresh had faced. Within minutes, the Kresh ships were fleeing, damaged and broken. Target their engines, Han ordered coldly. I want prisoners to question. 2 Kresh ships were disabled and captured. The rest escaped into faster than light, running like cowards. The Soul's fury pulled alongside the damaged Horizon's Promise. Repair crews and medical teams transferred over. Commander Han met G1 in the docking bay and they clasped hands. Thank you, G1 said. You saved us. We're not done yet, Han replied. I've been ordered to escort you to the Galactic Council station. Ambassador Deho has called an emergency session. He wants you there to present evidence. The journey to Council Station took 2 days. During that time, Ji-won watched Hyeji grieve for Velmara. The scientist barely spoke, barely ate. She just sat in her quarters staring at the wall. Ji-won sat with her sometimes, not saying anything, just being there. She saved 17 people, Hyeji finally said. She made sure everyone got out before herself. That's who the Velarin are. That's who we lost. The Council Station was massive, a structure built by a dozen species to serve as neutral ground for galactic government. Ships from hundreds of worlds docked here. G1 had been here before, but never like this. Never carrying evidence of betrayal. Ambassador Deho met them at the docking bay. His face was grave. The Council has agreed to hear our testimony. But Captain, you need to prepare yourself. They're not happy we're making accusations. I don't care if they're happy, Ji-won said. They need to hear the truth. The council chamber was enormous, with seats for representatives from every member species. The Threx sat in their section, insect-like beings clicking their mandibles. The Luminar glowed softly in theirs, crystalline beings that reflected light in rainbow patterns. The Ondari floated in water-filled spheres, their tentacles moving slowly. And at the center sat the Kresh delegation, reptilian faces showing no emotion. Deho stood at the speaker's platform. Honored council members, we present evidence of a war crime. The unprovoked attack on Sarath colony, resulting in the deaths of 49,700 Velarin civilians. He displayed the data from the colony's satellites, ship signatures, weapon signatures, everything. The evidence was undeniable. The Threx representative clicked forward. This evidence proves nothing. Ship signatures can be faked. We have survivors, Ji-won said, stepping forward without permission. Witnesses who saw your ships. Unreliable testimony from traumatized civilians, the Luminar representative said, their voice like ringing crystal. Not admissible. Ji-won couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're not even denying it. You're just making excuses. The Ondari representative's translator spoke. The council took action for the greater good of the galaxy. The Velarin possessed dangerous technology. Their bioregeneration research could destabilize the balance of power. So you killed them? Deho's voice shook with anger. You murdered 50,000 civilians because they might develop something? We attempted to negotiate, the Kresh overlord Vexron said calmly. The Velarin refused to share their research. They left us no choice. They're pacifists, G1 shouted. They don't even have weapons. What choice did you give them? Submit or die? The council speaker, a being from a species called the Yorn, raised a hand for silence. The actions taken at Sarath were sanctioned by council security protocols. The Velarin technology represented a clear and present danger. The matter is closed. Closed? Deho stared in disbelief. You admit to genocide and call it closed? Humanity is advised to stand down, the speaker continued. Accept the council's decision.
Any other course will result in your expulsion from this body. G1 looked around the chamber.
At the faces of beings from 100 worlds, none of them spoke up. None of them defended the Velarin. They just sat there silent and complicit. What about the Velarin homeworld? She asked quietly. What about Velora? The Kresh overlord smiled, showing sharp teeth. Velora is being brought into compliance as we speak. They have been given the same choice their colony had. A screen activated, showing a live feed. The beautiful blue-green world of Velora hung in space. Around it, dozens of Kresh warships took position. Even as G1 watched, orbital bombardment began. Beams of energy lanced down from the sky, striking cities, forests, oceans, and from the planet no resistance came. The Velarin had no weapons. They wouldn't fight back even to save themselves. No, Hyeji whispered. Thul Kor, the Velarin elder who had survived Sarath, fell to his knees, making sounds of anguish that no translator could capture. Ji-won watched the bombardment continue, watched another world die, watched her friend's entire civilization burn. She turned to Ambassador Deho. Get Earth on the line now. What are you going to tell them? He asked. G1 looked back at the council, at the beings who had done this and felt no shame. I'm going to tell them that the Galactic Council just declared war on humanity. The transmission from Earth came through on a secured channel. President Unisong's face filled the screen in Ambassador Deho's private office. Her expression was hard, carved from stone. Behind her, the flags of United Earth hung motionless. Ambassador Choi, Captain Park, I've reviewed your evidence and heard your testimony, President Una said. I've also watched the footage of Valora burning. Is the bombardment still ongoing? Yes, Madam President, Deho replied. The Kresh fleet has been firing for 6 hours now. The Velarin sent one final transmission before their communication satellites were destroyed. They said they would not fight back. They asked only that we remember them. President Una closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they burned with cold fury. How many Velarin are left alive? G1 stepped forward. Our best estimate is 3,000, Madam President. Maybe less, scattered across the galaxy as refugees. The Council species are hunting them down. 3,000, the President repeated slowly, from a population of 8 million. The Velarin saved humanity when we were nothing but primitives stumbling into space. They gave us technology, friendship, and hope. And this is how the galaxy repays them. Madam President, what are your orders? Deho asked. President Una stood up and the camera pulled back to show her full figure. Ambassador Choi, you are recalled to Earth immediately. Bring every human representative with you. We are withdrawing from the Galactic Council effective immediately. Madam President, if we withdraw, we lose our voice in galactic politics, Deho warned. We lost our voice the moment they ignored our testimony, Una said sharply. Captain Park, you will coordinate with our intelligence services. I want the location of every Velarin survivor found. We're bringing them home. Home, Madam President? G1 asked. We're establishing a sanctuary, a place where the Velarin can rebuild, protected by human military might. No one will touch them again. The President's voice softened slightly. And Captain, tell your crew and those survivors that Earth grieves with them. The Velarin will not be forgotten. The transmission ended. G1 and Deho looked at each other in the silence that followed. She's going to start a war, Deho said quietly. Good, G1 replied. Across human space, the news spread like wildfire. Every media outlet showed the footage of Valora burning. Every channel broadcast the testimony from the council chambers. Every screen displayed the faces of Velarin children who had died at Sarath. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Protests erupted on Earth, Mars, Europa, Titan, and every human colony world. Millions of people filled the streets demanding action. They carried signs with Valoran names on them. They shared memories of Velarin teachers, scientists, and friends who had touched their lives. In New Beijing, a massive crowd gathered outside the government buildings. In New Lagos, people held candlelight vigils. In New Seoul, protesters blocked the spaceport, refusing to let any council species ships land. A young woman named Yoonji Kwan worked in Earth's intelligence division. She had been analyzing council communications for years, looking for threats to human security. Now she had a new mission: find the Velarin survivors before the council did. She worked day and night, tracking signals, intercepting transmissions, following every lead. Her team mapped out refugee movements across a dozen systems. Every time they found Velarin life signs, they dispatched human ships to extract them. On a space station near the Kresh border, a man named Taiyang Nam ran a small trading post. He had lost his wife and daughter on Sarath. They had been visiting Velarin friends when the attack came. Now Taiyang used his connections with smugglers and traders to move Velarin refugees through the underground networks, one step ahead of the hunters. I have 6 Valoran hiding in cargo container Delta 7, he told Yoonji over an encrypted channel. But there's a Threx patrol ship in orbit. I can't get them out. Hold position, Yoonji replied. Help is coming. 12 hours later, a human stealth ship called Ghost of Valora slipped past the Threx patrol. The Valoran refugees were extracted without a shot fired. Captain Sora Bay, who commanded the stealth ship, had pulled off 17 such rescues already. On Earth, President Una stood before the United Earth Assembly. Every representative from every human world had gathered. The chamber was silent as she spoke. The Galactic Council has shown us their true nature, she said. They preach peace while committing genocide. They speak of justice while protecting murderers. They claim to represent civilization, but they have none. She paused, looking at each representative in turn. The Velarin saved us. When we were alone and afraid in the darkness of space, they reached out their hands and pulled us into the light. They asked nothing in return. They wanted only friendship. Her voice grew stronger. Now they are dying, hunted, scattered, alone, and the galaxy watches and does nothing. But we are not the galaxy. We are humanity, and we do not abandon our friends. The chamber erupted in applause. Every representative stood, cheering. I am ordering full mobilization of Earth Defense Forces, President Yuna continued. Every warship, every carrier, every defense platform. We will gather the largest fleet humanity has ever assembled. And what will we do with this fleet? Asked one representative. President Yuna's answer was simple. We will save the Velarin, and we will make those who hurt them pay. Admiral Jamin Seo stood in the command center of Mars Defense Station, watching the fleet assemble. Ships poured in from every direction. Carriers from Jupiter's moons. Destroyers from the asteroid belt. Cruisers from the outer colonies. Even civilian ships were being converted for military use. How many do we have? He asked his aide. 800 warships, Admiral. More coming every hour. The shipyards are working triple shifts to arm and supply them. 800 warships. The entire military might of humanity, gathered for one purpose. General Sun Wukong arrived at the station with his tactical team. He had been studying Kresh and Council military doctrine for weeks now. They're not ready for this, he told Admiral Jamin. The Council species have never faced coordinated human warfare. They've been at peace so long they've forgotten how to fight a real war. Good, the Admiral replied. Let's remind them. On the Council station, alarms were beginning to sound. Their intelligence had picked up the human fleet movements. The Council convened an emergency session. The humans are mobilizing, the Threx representative clicked nervously. This is unprecedented. They're bluffing, the Kresh overlord said dismissively. They won't risk war over a few dead Velarin. But deep in Council intelligence, analysts were looking at the data with growing fear. The human fleet wasn't dispersing. It wasn't taking defensive positions. It was gathering, organizing, preparing for offensive action. Meanwhile, Hiji led a covert mission to a Kresh prison station. Intelligence had located 200 Velarin prisoners held there. The Kresh were interrogating them, trying to extract information about Velarin technology before executing them. Hyeji's team came in fast and hard. Marines breached the station from 3 points. The Kresh guards barely had time to raise weapons before they were overwhelmed. In the prison cells, Hyeji found the Velarin. Among them was Thulkor, the elder from Serath, who had been captured trying to protect younger Velarin. Dr. Lee, Thulkor said weakly, you should not have come. This will start a war. Hyeji helped him to his feet. The war already started when they killed Velmara. When they burned Valora, we're just finishing it. They extracted all 200 prisoners. As they fled the station, Kresh ships gave chase, but human fighters covered their retreat. Every Velarin made it to safety. Back on Earth, President Yuna met with Thulkor privately. The Velarin elder was old now. His blue skin faded, his movements slow. But his eyes still held wisdom. President Song, I must ask you to reconsider, Thulkor said. My people are pacifists. We do not believe in violence, even in our defense. If you wage war in our name, you dishonor our memory. The war began at dawn, though in space there was no real dawn. The human fleet struck 12 systems simultaneously, hitting targets across Kresh and Council territory with devastating precision. Admiral Jamin had planned every detail, studied every weakness, prepared for every scenario. Captain Sora Bay guided her stealth ship Ghost of Valora through the darkness toward a Kresh command station. Behind her flew 20 more stealth vessels, invisible to sensors, silent as death. They had one mission: cripple the enemy's ability to coordinate their forces. Approaching target, her pilot whispered, though there was no one to hear them. Defense grid is active. Automated weapons platforms online. This is going to be tight. Sora watched the tactical display, waiting for the perfect moment. The Kresh were good, but they relied too much on their technology. They had patterns, rhythms, gaps, and humans were excellent at finding gaps. Now, she commanded. The stealth ships dropped their electronic countermeasures and fired simultaneously. Missiles streaked toward the command station from 20 directions at once. The Kresh defenses tried to respond, but they couldn't track targets they couldn't see. Explosions rippled across the station's hull. Communication arrays shattered. Power systems failed. Target neutralized, Sora reported. Kresh command and control in this sector is blind. Across the galaxy, similar strikes played out. Human Special Forces teams sabotaged sensor networks, destroyed supply depots, and eliminated key installations. Within the first hour, the Kresh military was in chaos, unable to coordinate their scattered forces. At Kresh Prime, the enemy homeworld, Captain Jiwan led the main assault. Her ship, the newly commissioned Valora's Vengeance, was at the tip of a spear formation of 300 warships. They dropped out of faster than light at the edge of the system, and every sensor on the planet immediately screamed warnings. Kresh orbital defense platforms are powering up, Minho reported from his tactical station, counting 60 platforms, each armed with heavy weapons. Their home fleet is launching. 200 ships, Jiwan smiled coldly. They think 200 is enough. Show them what humanity brought. The human fleet spread out in perfect formation. Then something happened that the Kresh had never seen before. Human engineers, led by a brilliant woman named Hana Im, had taken Valoran shield technology and combined it with human weapons design. The result was phase torpedoes, weapons that could pass through energy shields like they weren't even there. Fire, Jiwan ordered. Thousands of torpedoes launched, shimmering with strange energy. The Kresh orbital platforms raised their shields, confident in their defenses. The torpedoes passed through the shields without slowing down and struck the platforms directly. Explosions bloomed across the orbital defense network. Impossible, someone shouted on the Kresh command frequency. Their weapons ignore shields. Panic spread through the Kresh fleet. They had built their entire military doctrine around shield technology. Now those shields meant nothing. The Kresh ships tried to fight back, but human tactics were relentless. Fighter wings led by Lieutenant Commander Junho Park swept through their formations, targeting engines and weapon systems. The Kresh had numbers, but humans had coordination, experience, and rage driving them forward. Enemy flagship Dominion Fang is attempting to flee, Minho reported. That's the ship that bombed Valora. Jiwan's eyes narrowed. All ships focus fire on that vessel. I want it destroyed. The Dominion Fang tried to escape, but human ships were faster. They herded it, cut off escape routes, and hammered it with weapons fire. The massive Kresh flagship, which had burned an entire world, died screaming in the void. Target destroyed, Minho confirmed. There was satisfaction in his voice. The Battle of Kresh Prime lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Kresh orbital defenses were rubble. Their home fleet was shattered and their homeworld was defenseless. But Jiwan did not order bombardment. She opened a channel to the planet. This is Captain Jiwan Park of the United Earth Forces. Your military has been defeated. Surrender now and your civilians will not be harmed. We are not like you. We do not murder the innocent. The Kresh military command, what was left of it, had no choice. They surrendered. In another system, Commander Borum Han's task force hit a Threx prison facility. Intelligence reported 400 Valoran prisoners held there, awaiting execution. Borum's Marines stormed the facility with brutal efficiency. The Threx were insectoid beings, fast and numerous. But they had never faced human close-quarters combat. Marines moved through corridors in perfect teams, covering each other, never wasting a shot. The Threx defenders fell back in confusion, unable to match human aggression and discipline. Prison level secured, Borum reported. We have the Valoran. All 400 alive. As the prisoners were evacuated, Borum found something else. Documents, data files, evidence of council planning. The attack on the Valoran hadn't been spontaneous. It had been planned for months, coordinated at the highest levels of the Galactic Council. Get this to intelligence, she told her aide. The whole galaxy needs to see what the Council really is. In the nebula of storms, Junho Park led his fighter wings against Threx hive ships. The Threx relied on overwhelming numbers, sending waves of small fighters against their enemies. Against most species, it worked. Against human pilots, it was suicide. Break by wings, Junho commanded. Delta pattern. The human fighters split into precise formations, each wing supporting the others. They moved like they were dancing, a deadly ballet among the stars. The Threx fighters swarmed, but human pilots had trained for this. Every shot counted, every maneuver had purpose. Junho's targeting computer locked onto a Threx fighter. He fired and it exploded. Locked onto another, fired again. His wingmen did the same, working in perfect harmony. The Threx numbers meant nothing when humans could kill 3 enemies for every one they lost. Enemy hive ship is retreating, one pilot called. They're running! Let them run, Junho replied. Let them tell the others what happens when you face humanity. The Luminar proved harder to fight. Their crystalline cities on Prism 4 were beautiful but heavily defended. The Luminar could manipulate light itself, creating illusions and blinding weapons. But human engineers had planned for this too. Hana Im's team deployed special sensors that could see through Luminar illusions. The crystalline cities that seemed impenetrable were suddenly vulnerable. Human forces surrounded Prism 4 and offered terms. Surrender or be destroyed, Admiral Jamin broadcasted. You have 1 hour. The Luminar were proud, arrogant. They refused. They believed their defenses were unbreakable, their illusions perfect. They were wrong. Human siege weapons developed specifically for this battle began firing. They used sonic resonance, finding the exact frequency that made Luminar crystals shatter. The beautiful cities began to crack and fall. After 30 minutes, the Luminar surrendered. They had never experienced defeat before. Now they understood that beauty and pride meant nothing against determined enemies. The Andari were smarter. When human fleets approached their worlds, they immediately sued for peace. Their sphere ships broadcast surrender signals before the first shot was fired. We were misled, the Andari ambassador claimed. The Kresh told us the Velarin were dangerous. We did not know they were peaceful. You participated in genocide, G1 replied coldly when she took the ambassador's surrender. Your ignorance is not an excuse. You will stand trial for your crimes. As human forces swept across Council space, resistance crumbled. The Council species had grown soft during their long peace. They had forgotten what real war meant. Humanity showed them, but humans were not cruel for cruelty's sake. Every battle came with offers of surrender. Every victory was followed by humanitarian aid for civilians. Human medical teams treated wounded enemies. Human engineers helped repair civilian infrastructure damaged in the fighting. We're not here to conquer, General Sun Wukang explained to his officers. We're here for justice. Show strength in battle, but mercy in victory. That's what the Velarin would have wanted. In 3 months of fighting, humanity captured 15 council systems. The Kresh Empire was broken, its fleet destroyed, its colonies occupied. The Threx hive worlds were under human control. The Luminar crystal cities were dim and silent. Only the Andari, who surrendered early, received lenient treatment. The Galactic Council tried to rally other species to fight humanity, but none would answer the call. They had all seen what happened to those who opposed Earth's forces. More importantly, they had seen the evidence Borum found. The Council's own documents proved the genocide was planned, deliberate, inexcusable. Public opinion across the galaxy shifted. Species that had stayed neutral began speaking out. The Council had lied to everyone. The Velarin had been peaceful, harmless, beneficial to galactic civilization, and the Council had murdered them for technology they wanted to steal. On the bridge of the Velora's vengeance, G1 received a message from Earth. It was from Thulkor, the Veloran elder. Captain Park, his translated voice said softly. I have watched the war with great sadness. So much death, so much destruction. But I must admit you have kept your word. You have shown mercy where you could. You have protected the innocent. You have fought with honor if such a thing exists in war. The old Velarin paused. 3,600 Velarin are alive today because of you. You have given us a chance to rebuild, to continue. We will never forget this debt. Humanity has proven to be the truest friend we ever had. G1 felt tears on her cheeks. We're not done yet, Elder. Not until every one of those responsible faces justice. The Kresh General Thakvar tried one last desperate attack. He gathered the remnants of the Kresh fleet, pulled ships from every corner of their territory and threw them at the human lines in a massive counteroffensive. It failed. Human forces, now experienced and battle-hardened, tore through the attack like it was nothing. Thakvar's flagship was disabled, and the general himself was captured. When they brought him before Admiral Jamin, the Kresh general was defiant. You have won this battle, human, but you cannot hold what you have taken. Eventually you will fall. Admiral Jamin looked at him without emotion. We didn't take these systems for ourselves. We took them because you used them to murder our friends. When justice is served, we'll leave. We don't want your empire. We want you to answer for your crimes. Within days, the war was effectively over. The Council species were defeated, occupied, and awaiting judgment. Humanity controlled 15 systems and had the power to take more, but they stopped. Just as they promised, this was about justice, not conquest. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had arrived as weak newcomers 30 years ago. Now they were the dominant military power and everyone knew it. But more importantly, everyone knew that humanity valued loyalty above all else. They protected their friends no matter the cost. And they made their enemies pay for every drop of innocent blood spilled. The trials began 6 months after the war ended. A new station was built specifically for this purpose, orbiting neutral space where all species could observe. The humans called it Justice Station, and it was equipped with courts holding cells and broadcast equipment to transmit the proceedings across the entire galaxy. The first to face trial was the Kresh overlord Vexron. He stood in the defendant's area, surrounded by armed human guards. The courtroom was massive, with seats for observers from hundreds of worlds. Every major species had sent representatives to watch. Chancellor Minji Ro served as the chief prosecutor. She was a former lawyer from Earth who had volunteered for this duty. Her voice was calm but firm as she presented the evidence: satellite footage of the Serath massacre, testimony from survivors like Young Kyung, documents proving the attacks were planned and deliberate. "You ordered the destruction of Serath colony," Minji stated.
49,700 civilians died.
"You then led the bombardment of Valora, killing millions more. How do you plead?" Vexron showed no remorse. "I did my duty. The Velarin possessed dangerous technology. They were a threat to galactic security." "They were peaceful scientists," Minji replied. "They had no weapons, no armies, no hostile intent. You murdered them because you wanted their research. That's not security. That's theft and genocide." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Every piece of evidence was examined, every witness heard. The Threx representative who had participated tried to claim they were following orders. The Luminar delegate said they believed the Council's lies. The Andari envoy begged for mercy, claiming ignorance. None of their excuses mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. The judges, selected from neutral species who had no involvement in the conflict, deliberated for 2 days. "We find the defendants guilty of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against sapient life," the lead judge announced. "They are sentenced to life imprisonment on a human-administered prison world. Their assets are forfeit, to be used for reparations to the Velarin people." Vexron and the other council leaders were taken away. They would spend the rest of their lives in cells thinking about what they had done. But the trials were just the beginning. Humanity had bigger plans. On a beautiful green world called New Valora, reconstruction was underway. The planet had been chosen carefully, with oceans and forests similar to the original Velarin homeworld. Human engineers worked alongside the 3,600 Velarin survivors to build a new civilization. Jiwan walked through the construction site, watching buildings rise from the ground. They were built in traditional Velarin style, with flowing curves and integration with nature. But they also had human defensive systems hidden beneath the beauty. Never again would the Velarin be defenseless. "It's taking shape," said Thulkor, walking beside her. "The old Velarin moved slowly now, aged by stress and grief. But it will never be the same. We lost so much, so many voices silenced forever." "I know," Jiwan said quietly. "But you're alive. Your people will continue. That's what we fought for." Young Velsara, who had become a leader among the surviving Velarin, approached them. She was from the next generation, born after the alliance with humanity began. "Captain Park, the memorial garden is ready. We'd like you to see it." They walked to a hillside overlooking the ocean. There, the Velarin had created a garden with 8 million flowers, one for each Velarin who had died. In the center stood a statue of Velmara, the scientist who had died saving others aboard the Horizon's Promise. Kieji was already there, kneeling before the statue. "She came here every day, rain or shine." She once sat beside her friend, saying nothing, just being present. "She would have loved this place," Kieji finally said. "She always talked about wanting to see new worlds, discover new things. Now her people have a new world and she's not here to see it." "She's the reason they have this chance," Jiwan replied. "Her sacrifice and thousands of others like her. They won't be forgotten." President Yuna Song arrived on New Valora for a special ceremony. With her came Admiral Jemin, General Sunwoo, and representatives from every human world. They gathered in the central plaza, where the Velarin community had assembled. "Today we established the Sanctuary Accord," President Yuna announced. New Valora and the surrounding space are now under permanent human protection. We pledge that no hostile force will ever threaten the Velarin again. We station the Memorial Fleet here as a promise and a warning. The Memorial Fleet consisted of 50 warships, permanently assigned to protect Velarin space. They would rotate crews, but they would never leave their posts. Admiral G1 Park was given command of the fleet. It was both an honor and a burden she accepted without hesitation. We also announced the Valora Education Initiative. President Yuna continued, "Human universities will preserve all Velarin knowledge, culture, and history. We will teach our children about the Velarin, about their wisdom and kindness. They will be remembered not as victims, but as teachers who made humanity better." Belsera stepped forward to speak. Her voice was young but strong. "Humanity did what we could not. You stood against evil when it would have been easier to look away. You fought for us when we could not fight for ourselves. The Velarin will never forget this debt." She paused, looking at the assembled crowd. "My people believed that peace was the only path. We thought that if we harmed no one would harm us. We were wrong. The galaxy taught us a terrible lesson, but you taught us something else. That there are those who will stand for the defenseless. That loyalty and courage still exist. That friendship means something." Minho, who had retired from military service, had chosen to live on New Valora. He worked as a liaison between humans and Velarin, helping both species understand each other better. He found peace here, away from war, helping build something new. "Do you miss it?" Jiwan asked him one evening as they watched the sunset. "The service, the adventure?" "Sometimes," Minho admitted. "But this feels right. The war was necessary, but building peace is just as important. The Velarin need help healing. I can provide that here." Across the galaxy, the balance of power had shifted permanently. The Galactic Council was dissolved, its member species disgraced and weakened. In its place, smaller regional alliances formed, none of them dominated by any single power. Humanity received thousands of requests from other species seeking protection agreements. Some were genuine, seeking safety. Others just wanted access to human military technology. Earth was careful about which request to accept. "We're not building an empire," President Yuna told her cabinet. "We're establishing a new principle, that the strong have a duty to protect the weak. That genocide will be punished. That loyalty matters." The former Kresh territories were administered by human peacekeepers until local governments could be established. Chancellor Minji Ro oversaw the transition, ensuring that the new Kresh leadership understood the rules. No more conquest, no more aggression, no more atrocities. "You have a choice," Minji told the new Kresh Civilian Council. "You can work with us to build a better future, or you can try to return to your old ways. But understand this, humanity is watching. We will not allow another genocide." The Threx Hive world slowly rebuilt under human supervision. The insectoid species were good at organization and industry. Under new leadership, they began producing goods for trade rather than weapons for war. Some Threx even came to New Valora, offering their construction skills to help build the Velarin sanctuary. The Luminar crystal cities on Prism 4 began glowing again, but with a different light. The arrogant pride that had defined them was gone, replaced by humility. They had learned that beauty and technology meant nothing without morality. Only the Ondari received relatively light treatment. Because they had surrendered quickly and cooperated fully, humanity allowed them to maintain their independence. But they would never forget the lesson. They had participated in evil, even if unknowingly, and it had cost them dearly. On Justice Station, a museum was built to document what had happened. It displayed the evidence of the genocide, the testimonies of survivors, and the history of the Velarin people. Every species was required to send students there to learn about the cost of hatred and the importance of protecting the innocent. 5 years after the war ended, a new ship was launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. She was named Never Again, a joint human-Velarin vessel designed for exploration and peacekeeping. Her captain was Junho Park, Minho's cousin who had proven himself in the war. "This ship represents our future," Admiral Jamin said at the launch ceremony. "Not a future of conquest or domination, but one of protection and partnership. We explore together, we defend together, we build together." On the bridge of the Never Again, both human and Velarin crew members worked side by side. The new generation, born after the tragedy, learning to work as one. Jiwan stood on New Valora, watching the new ship's maiden voyage on a viewscreen. Hyeji stood beside her and Thulkor sat nearby, very old now but still present. Do you think we did the right thing? Hyeji asked quietly. So many died in the war. Human soldiers, enemy combatants, even some civilians caught in the crossfire. Was it worth it? Jiwon looked at the Velarin children playing in the gardens nearby, at the community that had been saved from extinction, at the principle that had been established, that evil would be opposed, that friends would be protected, that the strong had a duty to defend the weak. Yes, she said simply. It was worth it. Thulakor made a sound of agreement. My people believed that all life was sacred, that violence was never the answer. We were wrong, or at least incomplete in our wisdom. Sometimes violence is necessary to protect life. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to fight for it. You understood this when we could not. The old Velarin stood slowly, looking at Jiwon with deep gratitude. The Velarin saved humanity once, giving you the tools to survive in space. You returned that gift 1,000-fold. You gave us something more precious than technology. You gave us a future. That night, Jiwon visited Velmara's memorial one last time before returning to her fleet. She placed fresh flowers at the base of the statue, as she had done countless times before. We kept our promise, she said to the silent stone. Your people are safe. The ones who hurt them paid the price, and the galaxy knows now that humanity does not forget its friends. The stars shone above New Valora, the same stars that had watched the Valoran civilization rise and nearly fall. But tonight they shone on something new. A sanctuary protected by human ships, a people saved from extinction, a friendship that had endured the worst the galaxy could throw at it. Somewhere in the cosmos, other species watched and learned. They saw what happened when you betrayed humanity's trust. They saw the price of genocide. They saw the rewards of loyalty and courage. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humanity remembered its friends. Humanity protected those who could not protect themselves. And most importantly, humanity would never forgive those who harmed the innocent. The Velarin were rebuilding. Humanity stood guard. And together they would make sure that nothing like this ever happened again. The memorial garden on New Valora grew larger each year, but beside the 8 million flowers for the dead, new flowers bloomed. Flowers for hope, for renewal, for the future. The Velarin would survive. They would remember. And they would never be alone again.